the sound of desperation. The evening air was cool and the city lights flickered like stars trying to outshine the real ones above. The corner of 9th and Elwood wasn't known for glamour, but tonight, something unusual was happening there. 5 teenagers stood together, forming a rough circle, tuning their instruments under the dull glow of a street lamp. Cars passed without slowing and people walked by with their heads down, barely glancing. But inside the tight circle of friends there was electricity. There was urgency. And above all, there was hope. Emily tightened her guitar strap and looked at the others. Her fingers were already numb from nerves, but she forced a smile. Ready? Mason, holding a pair of drumsticks and tapping against a plastic bucket, nodded. Let's do it. For your mom. Liam adjusted the strap on his battered bass guitar. And for your little brother. No one's getting evicted if we can help it. Sophia raised her violin and gave a small smile. Even if we just make 50 bucks tonight, it's better than nothing. And then there was Jaden, quiet, always watching. He held nothing but a harmonica and a small, beat-up speaker on wheels. Let's make people listen, he said softly. Emily stepped forward, facing the flow of pedestrians. Most ignored them. A few tossed curious looks. Someone whispered, "Kids again, probably just noise." She felt it in her chest, but she strummed her first chord anyway. It rang out clean and raw. Mason added a rhythm with his buckets. Sophia's violin laced through the sound like a ribbon caught in wind. Liam's bass was steady, holding it all together. Then Jaden blew a long, sorrowful note through the harmonica, and the city paused. The song was their own. It didn't come from the radio. It came from their pain. Emily's voice cracked as she sang, "We don't want fame. We don't want gold. We just want a place to stay when it's cold." 3 days earlier, everything changed. Emily came home to see her mom sitting at the kitchen table, holding a white paper with shaky hands. Her little brother, Daniel, colored quietly in the corner, too young to understand what was happening. Emily dropped her school bag and asked, "What's wrong?" Her mom's eyes were red. "They gave us 30 days. Rent went up. I can't cover it, baby." Emily sat down slowly. Her heart beat hard. This apartment was all they had. She'd grown up here. Daniel had taken his first steps in the hallway. And now, someone wanted to take it away because money mattered more than memories. "How much do we need?" she asked, gripping the paper. 2,000 by next week, or they start the process. Emily nodded. No tears, no panic, just fire. "I'll figure it out." The next morning at school, she told her friends everything. At first, they were silent. Then Mason slapped the lunch table. "We'll raise it. We've got music. We've got heart." Jaden tilted his head. "You think people will stop and care?" Liam grinned. Only one way to find out. They formed a plan that same night. They would play every day after school, right on the busy streets where people passed by. They would pour everything into their performance and maybe, just maybe, someone would care enough to listen. But their first performance was rough. The sound wasn't balanced. People didn't stop, and their total earning was $12. And some coins. Emily tried not to cry. "Don't give up," Sophia whispered. "The world doesn't give, but we can still give it music." Each day they came back stronger. New chords, tighter harmonies. Jaden figured out how to run a mic through his speaker. Mason learned how to build a full rhythm kit out of trash cans and metal lids. They painted a sign, "Trying to save our home. Please listen." Still, it wasn't enough. On day 5, something happened. A black car stopped a little down the street. It wasn't flashy. It didn't scream celebrity. But the man who stepped out wore a plain gray jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He walked alone, quiet, carrying a paper bag. He stopped when he heard the music. Not because it was loud, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Keanu Reeves had been filming nearby. He was heading to his hotel after grabbing dinner when he heard a violin whisper through the city's noise. He followed the sound like it was calling him home. When he reached the corner, he saw them, 5 kids playing their hearts out, with no audience but a few tired souls and a sleeping pigeon. He stood in the shadows, just listening. Emily's voice shook as she sang the final lines of their song. "We are not invisible. We are not weak. We are just young hearts trying to speak." A man walked by and muttered, "Should get a real job." He dropped a penny into their case and walked on. Keanu didn't move. They finished and bowed, exhausted. Emily looked into the case. Only $37. Her heart fell. She didn't see him step forward. Keanu walked up slowly, clapping softly. "That," he said, "was beautiful." They froze. Emily blinked. Jaden nearly dropped his harmonica. Sophia whispered, "No way. You're—" Mason tried to speak. Keanu smiled gently. "Just a guy who loves music. And I think the world needs to hear yours." He pulled out his wallet, then stopped. "No, that's not enough." He looked around. "Do you have 5 minutes?" Liam nodded, dazed. "Yes, why?" Keanu said. "Follow me." They looked at each other, confused and breathless. Emily whispered, "This can't be real." Keanu held the speaker for Jaden and walked with them toward the unknown, but that was only the beginning. The promise of something bigger. The city buzzed around them, but for the 5 teenagers walking behind Keanu Reeves, everything felt quiet. They weren't sure where he was leading them. They weren't even sure what to say. Was this a dream? A prank? A miracle in disguise? Emily looked at Sophia, then whispered, "Do we follow him?" Sophia nodded, her violin case bouncing against her leg. "We already are." Keanu didn't say much as they walked. He carried Jaden's speaker like it weighed nothing, and he didn't even seem to notice people staring as they passed. Some pedestrians glanced twice, mouths half open, recognizing him but unsure. Others kept walking, missing the strange little parade of 5 teenagers trailing behind a Hollywood legend. After a few turns, they reached a wide glass building tucked between a row of shops. The sign read, "Echo House, Community Arts Center." Keanu stopped in front of the door and turned to face them. "Have you ever recorded your music?" Mason scratched his head. "We tried once on my phone. It came out bad." Keanu smiled. "I figured. Come on inside." The receptionist looked up and gasped, but Keanu gave a calm nod. "I'm using Studio B for a bit. Just helping some friends." She stared, speechless, as he led them down a hallway lined with photos of musicians. Gold records, faded posters, people who had made it. Inside Studio B, the room was warm and full of soft lights. Microphones stood ready. There were real drums, real amps, a mixing console that looked like it could launch a spaceship. Liam let out a low whistle. Keanu placed Jaden's speaker down gently. "This is where people go when they have something worth hearing," he said. "And you all do." Jaden finally found his voice. "Why are you helping us?" Keanu looked at each of them, his face calm and steady. "Because I know what it feels like when nobody listens. And because kindness is the only thing that really matters in this world." Emily's eyes stung. "Thank you, we don't have much time. We need to raise money before the end of the week." Keanu nodded. "Then we'd better start now." What followed felt like magic. An engineer arrived, a woman named Carla with headphones around her neck and kindness in her eyes. "Keanu told me about you," she said. "I've cleared my schedule." Mason sat behind a real drum kit and found it hard to breathe. "This costs thousands of dollars." Carla smiled. "Not today." Each of them took their places. Emily tuned her guitar. Sophia tightened her violin strings. Jaden checked the harmonica mic. Liam gripped the bass like it was his last lifeline. "Take your time," Keanu said. "No rush. Just be honest." They recorded their first track that night. It wasn't perfect. There were mistakes, wrong notes, missed cues. But it was beautiful. Carla played it back, and they heard their voices, full, alive, echoing in the room like something that mattered. Keanu listened with his eyes closed. "You sound like people fighting to be heard," he said. The world loves stories like that. After the session, they all sat on the studio floor surrounded by empty water bottles and tangled cords. It was almost midnight. Emily looked at Keanu. "What happens now?" He pulled out his phone. "Now," he said, "we show the world." Within minutes, he posted a video of their street performance, raw and emotional, with a caption that read, "These 5 kids are fighting eviction. They're using music to survive, and they just stunned me. Help them save their home." Link below. The video ended with their recorded track playing softly under footage of them performing on the corner. By morning, it had over 400,000 views. By lunch, it had 2 million. In the cafeteria at school, students gathered around their table. "Emily, you're on YouTube. Is that really Keanu Reeves with you? You guys are amazing." Teachers came over. The principal called them to his office, not for punishment, but to shake their hands. He'd seen the video too. At home, Emily's mom was on the verge of tears. "Baby," she said, "someone just sent $1,000. Another person sent 300. We're getting donations from all over." Emily hugged her tight. "We're going to be okay." Daniel ran in with his toy dinosaur. "Mommy, are we rich?" "No," she said, laughing through her tears. "We're just loved." But it wasn't over yet. Later that week, Keanu invited them to a music showcase, a private event where musicians, producers, and guests came to hear raw talent. "They'll be listening," he said, "and not just with their ears." The teenagers were nervous. They'd never played for more than a few strangers on the street. This crowd wore suits. They sipped drinks. Some looked bored, until they played. Emily sang with everything inside her. Jaden's harmonica cried. Sophia's violin soared. Mason's drumming thundered like a heartbeat. Liam's bass wrapped it all together like roots in the ground. The room went silent. When they finished, the applause didn't stop. Keanu stood near the back, clapping slowly with a quiet smile. Beside him, a man in a sharp gray suit leaned in and said, "They're special." Keanu nodded. "I know." Outside the showcase, after everything ended, a woman approached the group. She handed them a card. "I run a youth foundation. We support young artists who have something to say, and you've said it loud and clear." Emily took the card with shaking hands. "Are you serious?" The woman smiled. "Dead serious." Mason blinked. Are we going to be okay?" Keanu stepped forward. "You already are." Emily looked at him, heart full. "We owe you everything." He shook his head. "You owe me nothing. Just promise me something." They all nodded. "Someday," Keanu said, "when someone else is out there playing their heart out on a sidewalk, stop and listen." They promised, and they meant it. The storm before the sunrise, the days that followed were a blur of emotion, hope, and disbelief. After the showcase, donations kept pouring in. Fans from around the world left comments on their video. Messages like, "I lost my home once. This brought me to tears. My son plays violin just like her. Sending love and $20. I don't even know you, but I believe in you." Emily checked the donation page every few hours. 2,000, 3,000. By the end of the 3rd day, it had crossed $10,000. They had more than enough to save her home, but the group made a decision. "We're not just saving one home," Emily said. "We're saving every home we can." So they split the extra money. Some went to help other families in their building who were also facing eviction. Some went to a local shelter for teens. The rest went into creating more music. But life, even when it starts to shine, can still bring clouds. On a Thursday afternoon, they were back on the corner of 9th and Elwood. This time, the crowd was bigger. People had gathered with cameras. News vans had parked nearby. It wasn't the same quiet place it used to be, and not everyone was happy. A man in a business suit stood across the street, arms crossed, watching. He was landlord Thomas Greer, the man who had issued the eviction notice to Emily's family. He wasn't impressed. He crossed the street, pushing past people. "This needs to stop," he said loudly. "This sidewalk is not a stage. These kids are trespassing." Mason stepped forward. "We're not blocking anyone." "You're disturbing my tenants," Thomas snapped. "People live here. They pay to live in peace." Emily swallowed hard. "You almost kicked us out." "And maybe I should have," Thomas said coldly. "You want sympathy? Take it somewhere else," the crowd murmured. Keanu, who had quietly joined the performance again that afternoon, stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice, didn't get angry. He simply said, "You know what's more disturbing than music?" Thomas narrowed his eyes. "What?" "Throwing children out of their homes." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Keanu turned to the people watching. These kids made something out of nothing. They didn't steal. They didn't beg. They didn't give up. And this man wants to shut them down? A young woman from the crowd yelled, "Shame!" An older man added, "My grandkids are safer with their music playing than silence in this city." Reporters started filming. Microphones pointed at Thomas. His face turned red. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You'll see." Then he turned and stormed off. Jaden whispered, "That didn't feel good." Keanu looked at him. Truth rarely does, but it's always right. The next morning, Emily woke up to find her phone exploding with notifications. Group's permit revoked by city officials after landlord complaint. Teens ordered to stop public performances. Violations of city code cited by property management. She stared at the screen in shock. A note had been slid under her door. "Cease all performances, or your lease will be reconsidered." Her mother stood behind her, silent, reading over her shoulder. "They're scared," she finally said. Emily turned. "Of what?" "Of you." The group met that afternoon in Mason's garage. "What do we do now?" Sophia asked, holding her violin close. Liam sighed. "We can't stop. We've come too far." Jaden looked at the speaker he'd been carrying every day for 2 weeks. "They're trying to silence us." Emily stood slowly. "Then we'll be louder." She grabbed her notebook, flipped to a blank page, and started writing. No music. No words, no sounds, just truth. Mason leaned in. "What are you doing?" "If they don't want to hear us," she said, "then we'll make them see us." 2 nights later, hundreds gathered in front of the city building. No instruments, no singing, just people holding signs. Music is not a crime. Youth deserve a voice. Stop eviction. Start listening. Keanu stood quietly with them, wearing a black hoodie, almost invisible in the crowd. Emily walked to the center and held up her sign. "We played to survive. Now we march to be heard." Reporters captured every moment. Thomas Greer watched from his office window, lips tight. The next day, the city reversed its decision. By the weekend, something incredible happened. A record label executive contacted Carla, the sound engineer. He had heard the kids' track on social media. He wanted to meet them. "We don't want to become famous," Emily said nervously when they sat across from him. He smiled. "Not every artist does. But you can use your voice to help more people." The group talked it over, for hours. Finally, Jaden said, "If we do this, we do it our way." They all agreed. A month later, they released their first official single, "Shelter." The lyrics were raw, the harmonies imperfect, the feeling unforgettable. The video was simple, footage of them performing on the street, mixed with shots of their neighborhood, their families, and the people they helped. Within 3 days, the song hit #1 on global streaming charts for independent artists. Radio hosts called it the soundtrack of struggle. Reviewers called it an anthem for the unheard. And Keanu? He didn't take a cent. Didn't ask for credit, he just smiled when they told him the news. "You are always stars," he said. "You just needed a night sky dark enough to shine." The fire they didn't see coming, the success of their first single, "Shelter," changed everything. But it also changed nothing. The 5 teenagers still met in Mason's garage. They still practiced on second-hand instruments. They still ate dollar pizza when they got together. And even though they were now being called voices of the forgotten by blogs and music critics, they didn't feel famous. Not really. They just felt like kids trying to hold on to something real. But outside their small world, everything was moving fast. Calls from managers, offers from TV shows, invitations to speak at events. The world had noticed them. And while that should have been a dream, it started to become overwhelming. Emily found herself staring at her phone late at night, reading long contracts she didn't understand. Her mom tried to help, but she didn't know much about the music industry either. "They want us to tour," Emily told the others one day. "Tour?" Liam asked. "Like, travel and play in different cities?" "Yes," Emily said. 3 states, 6 cities, all in 1 month, and they'll pay." Sophia looked nervous. "But we have school." Jaden stayed quiet. He had started skipping more classes lately, spending hours on music theory websites. Mason smiled. "Maybe we're already learning more than we ever could in a classroom." Emily looked around. "Are we really ready for this?" No one answered. The first show was in a community theater in Seattle. Small stage, 200 seats. Nothing fancy. But it felt like Madison Square Garden to them. They stood backstage, hands shaking. "Remember," Emily whispered, "we're not here for fame. We're here for the people who never get heard." Mason bumped his fist against hers. "And for every kid who got told to stay quiet." The curtain rose. The lights hit their eyes, and they played like it was the last time they ever would. After the show, fans lined up to talk to them. Teenagers with scars on their wrists, moms with tears in their eyes. One boy, no older than 10, handed Emily a drawing of her playing guitar with the words, "Thank you for saving my mom," written across the top. Emily blinked. "How did I do that?" His mother stepped forward. "Your song helped her leave an abusive situation. She said it made her feel brave." None of them knew what to say. They hugged her. They cried. They realized something that night. What they were doing was bigger than music. It was healing. But storms always find their way into clear skies. After their third show, while riding in a van between cities, Mason got a call from his mom. His voice dropped. His face changed. "What happened?" Sophia asked gently. He looked up, eyes wide. "My little sister. She had an asthma attack. Bad one. They had to rush her to the hospital." Jaden immediately said, "We're turning back." Mason shook his head. "No, she's stable now. My mom said to keep going. She said, we're doing something important." But the light in his eyes dimmed after that. At the next show, his drumming was slower, heavier. Emily placed a hand on his shoulder afterward. "You sure you're okay?" He nodded once. "We have to keep going." Back home, the neighborhood was changing too. The attention from the video and the protests had helped. But Thomas Greer, the landlord, wasn't done. He started construction on their building. Fake renovations, sudden inspections. One family had already been forced out due to water damage. Emily's mom called her crying. "They're trying to break us apart." "Don't worry," Emily said. "We'll fix it." But she wasn't sure how. So she called the only person who might know what to do. Keanu. He met them at a small diner just outside Portland. No cameras, no entourage, just him, sitting in a booth with coffee and a notebook. "You're in a storm now," he said quietly. Emily nodded. "How do we get out?" Keanu smiled softly. "You don't. You go through it, but you keep your people close, and you never forget why you started." They all listened like students in class. "Do you want to fight legally?" he asked. Liam leaned in. "We can do that." "I'll call some friends," Keanu said. "Pro bono. They love justice more than money." The next day, they held a press conference. Yes, a real one. 5 teenagers. One Hollywood star standing behind them. Emily stepped up to the mic. "Our landlord wants to silence our voices again. But we won't stop. We won't be pushed out. This isn't just about rent anymore. This is about dignity." The next day, More donations came in and something better, lawyers. But the music started to suffer. On the road, they were tired, emotional, homesick. Arguments started. Sophia wanted to play more classical arrangements. Mason wanted more upbeat songs. Jaden kept disappearing between shows, going on long, silent walks. One night, Emily exploded. "We're falling apart. We have one job. Stick together." Jaden finally spoke. "Then stop trying to lead like you're alone." Emily froze. Jaden wasn't being cruel, just honest. "You always try to fix everything," he said. "But you don't let us help." Emily sat down, breath shaking. I'm scared if I stop holding everything, it'll all fall." Sophia stepped forward. "Then let us hold some too." They hugged it out in the middle of a dusty parking lot under a broken streetlight. At their final tour stop, the venue was sold out. Hundreds of fans. Music critics. Even a few celebrities. Before going on stage, Emily stood backstage. With the others. "This is our last one," she said. "Let's play like we're back on the sidewalk." They nodded. And that night they did more than perform. They soared. Jaden's harmonica made grown men cry. Sophia's violin sent chills down spines. Liam's bass carried the beat of 1,000 silent hearts. Mason's drumming roared like thunder. And Emily. She sang like a girl who had once stood on a street corner begging the world to listen. And now the world finally was. When the lights fade, hold on. The final night of the tour ended with a standing ovation that lasted more than 5 minutes. But when the lights faded and the stage emptied, silence filled the dressing room. The kind of silence that comes when the dream slows down. Jaden sat alone near the window, watching the parking lot empty. Sophia quietly packed up her violin. Mason and Liam took apart the drum kit. Emily sat with her phone in hand, a missed call from her mom blinking on the screen. Everything had gone right on stage, but something didn't feel right inside. "We did it," Mason said finally. "We finished the tour." "Yeah," Liam replied, but there was no smile on his face. "So now what?" They returned home the next morning. There were no cameras, no crowds, just cold wind, old sidewalks, and familiar buildings. But the building, where Emily's family lived, didn't feel familiar anymore. A large plastic sheet covered half the windows. Construction crews moved in and out. The front door had a red tag. Under structural review, no entry. Emily's heart dropped. Mom stood outside holding Daniel's hand, tears in her eyes. "They said it's unsafe," she said. "We can't go back in." Daniel hugged his dinosaur tighter. Emily felt a deep ache in her chest. "Where are you staying?" "A friend's place," her mom replied. "Just for a few nights." Emily knew what that meant. The clock had started again. Thomas Greer hadn't stopped. He had waited, and now he was back to finish what he started. Keanu called that evening. "I heard," he said. "I'm sorry. We can't stop him," Emily whispered. "He'll just keep finding ways." "No," Keanu replied calmly. "He won't." He paused. "You remember those lawyers I called?" he asked. "They filed something today." "What?" "A city injunction, claiming illegal eviction practices and unsafe construction used as retaliation. It might take time, but it'll freeze him." Emily sat down, hand over her mouth. "How did you do that?" "I didn't," he said. "You did. With your voice. With your story. People care now," she cried without a sound. That weekend they were invited to speak at a youth summit downtown. Teenagers from all over the city gathered to share stories, talents, and struggles. When it was their turn to speak, Emily walked up to the mic with the others behind her. She didn't read a speech. She told the truth. "We're not musicians because we're perfect," she said. "We're musicians because we have no other way to explain the pain. We played on the sidewalk not to be heard but to survive. And now we're still fighting." Sophia stepped forward. "And we know there are others out there like us, scared, ignored, trying to hold on." Jaden added, "This isn't about fame. This is about making sure the next kid on the street corner doesn't feel alone." The room was quiet. Then someone started clapping, and it spread. Louder. Stronger. Not for fame. Not for a hit song. But for courage. Later that night, a girl approached them backstage. She wore oversized clothes and held a small notebook in her hand. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said softly, "but I wrote something after hearing you." Emily smiled. "Can we hear it?" The girl nodded and read from her notebook. "They said be quiet, but I wrote louder. They said sit still, but I stood prouder. They said give up, but your music made me fight. So I picked up a pen and stepped into the light." When she finished, they all clapped. Not out of politeness, but because they saw themselves in her. Emily hugged her. "Don't stop writing. Don't stop playing," the girl whispered back. Back home, things were changing. The media picked up the story about the eviction. Public pressure mounted. Officials began investigating Thomas Greer's practices. And then something unexpected happened. The city offered the band a grant, not just to support their music, but to help them open a small creative center in their neighborhood. A place for kids to play, write, record, and be heard. They called it Corner 9, named after the street where it all began. The place had one rule on the wall: your voice matters. They painted it in bold letters, and above it, they hung a photo of the 5 of them playing under a flickering street lamp. Months passed. Emily's family moved into a better apartment, safe, warm, and paid in full by the donations and grant money. Her mom started working at a local support center, helping other families going through housing troubles. Jaden began teaching harmonica to younger kids. Quiet as ever, but his smile had grown. Mason rebuilt his drum kit from scrap pieces into something beautiful. He called it the noise of survival. Sophia joined a youth orchestra but came back every weekend to help at Corner 9. Liam got accepted into a music school. They offered him a scholarship, but he said, "I'll only go if I can keep playing with my band." Emily kept writing songs, poems, letters. But the most powerful thing she ever wrote was a small sign she taped to her guitar case. "We started with nothing." And that was enough. And every time they stepped on stage, whether in a small cafe or a giant arena, they carried that sign, because they knew something now. When the world tries to silence you, play louder. Full circle under the street lamp, a year passed. But in some ways, nothing changed. Emily still carried her guitar everywhere. Mason still drummed on tables when he got bored. Sophia kept her violin case strapped like a second heart. Jaden, ever silent, always had his harmonica in his back pocket. Liam still walked with a slow rhythm, like the bass guitar lived in his spine. But in other ways, everything was different. Their band was now known across the country. Corner 9 wasn't just a place, it was a movement. Other cities started creating their own versions. Youth centers with music at the center and stories at the heart. They called themselves echo groups after the first studio Keanu brought them to. And it all began with 5 teenagers who stood on a sidewalk with nothing but broken instruments and a hope that someone, anyone, would listen. Now, millions were listening. Emily stood in front of a crowd of 4,000 one night. She held her guitar in her hands, lights flashing overhead. They had just finished a concert in Chicago. The crowd cheered like thunder, chanting their name. Corner 9, Corner 9. But instead of singing an encore, she walked to the edge of the stage and raised her hand. The crowd fell silent. She pointed to a small screen behind them. A video began to play. It showed a grainy clip, old footage from a street corner. Her voice cracked. Jaden's harmonica howled. Sophia's violin soared. Mason's buckets boomed. Liam's bass growled. It was their first performance. Raw, shaky, honest. The screen faded to black, and Emily spoke into the mic. "We started, on a sidewalk, playing to nobody, fighting eviction, scared out of our minds. And then, a man stopped. The crowd already knew who she meant. He didn't just give us money, he gave us belief. And tonight, he's here." The spotlight turned to the side of the stage. Keanu Reeves stepped out. Not dressed like a celebrity, just jeans and a hoodie. The same way he always showed up. Humble, quiet, kind. The entire arena stood and applauded. Keanu waved once and smiled, then leaned into Emily's ear and whispered, "You're the story now." She nodded through tears. Then together, they played one last song. After the concert, they didn't go to a hotel. They went back to 9th and Elwood, the same street corner, where it had all started. It was late. The street was quiet. No crowds, no reporters, no lights. Just 5 young adults with worn instruments standing under the same flickering street lamp from that first night. They didn't talk. Emily opened her guitar case. Mason flipped a nearby trash can and sat down. Sophia tucked her violin under her chin. Liam pulled out his bass. Jaden rolled the small speaker forward, plugged in his mic, and blew one long note through his harmonica. And they played. Not for fame, not for money, just because it was who they were. Passers-by slowed down. A couple holding hands stopped. An old man with a cane sat on a nearby bench. A mother with her daughter stood still listening. And just like that first night, the city paused. But this time they weren't unknown. They were hope in human form. Music born from pain, harmony shaped by struggle, and rhythm built on resilience. After the song ended, a small boy stepped forward. He wore a worn jacket and clutched a notebook. He looked up at them with wide eyes. "Can I play with you?" he asked shyly. Emily smiled and knelt down. "What? Do you play?" He pulled out a tiny flute, cracked but clean. "My sister says I'm not good," he whispered, "but I want to be." Jaden kneeled beside him and held out his hand. "Show us." The boy blew a soft, sweet note. It was a little off-key, a little nervous, but it was beautiful. They all looked at each other and nodded. "What's your name?" Emily asked. "Marco." "Well, Marco," Mason said with a grin, "you're our newest member." The boy's face lit up. That night, under the flickering light of the same street lamp, corner 9 became 6, and the music continued. Months later, when people asked Keanu Reeves why he helped them, he said only one thing. Because when you see light in the dark, you don't walk away. You make sure it shines. And when people asked Emily how it all happened, she'd tell them the truth. "We were just trying to save a home. We didn't know we'd find the whole world listening."